first speaker today is going to be David Post from IBM, and he'll lead us through that, and then we'll go through that. And I will not introduce people, because if you look at the program, you'll see there's quite a bit of stuff. I'll just say, David Post, where are you? Thanks.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here in Houston. Haven't been here for about 15 years, but it's good to be back. Nice and hot and steamy, just like New York City. So today I wanted to talk to you about IBM and the work that we're doing around smarter cities, how we think about it. You're now in a very exciting process to develop the Regional Sustainability Plan. So I wanted to kind of put out some somewhat provocative questions that I think might be able to help guide the process. Using my pole position here, I kind of just wanted to start by maybe throwing some questions out there that we could use throughout the course of the day to kind of think about as we go through the various speakers and we kind of go back and forth. So I'm not exactly sure what point you're at in terms of developing the Regional Sustainability Plan, but this is kind of the way, the set of questions that I think is helpful to think about kind of off the bat as we begin the day. So, what does becoming a sustainable city or community or region actually mean to you? What does it mean for Houston as a city specifically? Why does the city want to do this? What type of benefits is the plan expected to produce for citizens? How is the community going to come together to achieve its objectives? I'm going to talk about a lot of technology that I think can be a good facilitator, a good accelerator for helping communities become more sustainable. But obviously there's the people aspect, the organizational aspect, and that cannot be undermined. It's fundamentally about how a community is going to come together. That's what determines whether or not these types of initiatives are typically successful. The technology is just an accelerator. It can bring everything together, but it's fundamentally about people and organizations and how they work together. So that, what are the major challenges the community is likely to face, and how will success be measured? So those are just some questions off the top of my head that I thought we might want to think about during the course of the day today. So let me give you a little background on IBM. So in 2008, we started what's called the Smarter Planet Initiative. And the premise behind this initiative was that there's a lot of data out there, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of complexity. And it's by better understanding that complexity, better drawing connections between the data, that we can really develop measurable insights that we can use to improve our businesses, improve our communities, have more efficient governments, promote more sustainable communities, and so on and so forth. So this has been a big area of focus for IBM over the last few years, and one area specifically that we focused on within that is smarter cities. So businesses and government are facing big challenges right now. That's probably one thing that you're seeing in the process of doing the Regional Sustainability Plan. Essentially, cities are where this is going to unfold. The future of our planet is going to unfold. It's estimated that 1 million people a day are moving into cities, and each week, are moving into cities, not each day. And experts predict that the population of cities is going to double by 2050. So in many respects, the future of our planet is really going to be decided in cities. And as you can see up here, the challenges are pretty staggering. How are we going to reduce energy consumption in cities? How are we going to reduce greenhouse gas consumption? How are we going to come up with the investment required really to make our cities livable and more sustainable? How are we going to deal with resource scarcity in areas like water, for example? These are the types of issues we've been thinking a lot about within IBM in the context of our Smarter Cities initiative. And I just kind of want to use today as an opportunity to describe some of the lessons learned, some of the ideas that we've had in hopes that it can better inform the process of your planning. So as I said, in the last 20 years, we've seen an explosion of data. According to Eric Schmidt, put out a really good quote. Essentially, the amount of energy, the amount of data that we generate on a daily basis now is basically the equivalent of what was produced up to 2003. So we're living in an era where data is basically exploding. We have a globally connected international community, lots of mobile cell phone users, billions of sensors that are embedded in our environment, in our infrastructure, and it really opens up new opportunities. Technology can be a real accelerator now if we're able to find better ways to leverage this data effectively to promote changes in efficiency, service delivery, et cetera, et cetera. The good thing is we really no longer have to guess about what might happen today, about how what happens today affects tomorrow. And I'll give you some examples about that as I go on the presentation. But essentially, we can extract insights about today and make good predictions about tomorrow because we have the data. So if you're talking about a water system, it used to be necessary to send a maintenance crew around to figure out where the leaks were. If we put sensors on that water system, now we can have the system tell people where the leaks are. So we don't have to go looking for it. The data can tell us where it is, and therefore we can optimize the water system, reduce the amount of water that's lost, so on and so forth. So the plan is really wired for data. The question is really, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to leverage this technology to make our communities more sustainable, improve quality of life, and so on and so forth. The big difference now, as I said, is that the digital and physical are really converging right now. And we tend to think about this in three ways, the implications. So, if we think about a smarter city or a smarter planet, it's intelligent, it's interconnected, and it's instrumented. Whereas before, as I said with the water example, these kind of physical assets were sitting separate from the way that we thought about maintaining them or our ability to improve them, we can now integrate them together and optimize the systems. So we don't need to, we can have roads essentially tell us when they need to be maintained as opposed to go looking for roads. If you're talking about grids, smart grid technology specifically, the grid will, we can put sensors in the grid so that electricity is routed where it needs to go, as opposed to being routed the same amount everywhere. So by thinking about things in terms of the three I's, intelligent, interconnected, and instrumented, I think it really opens up a lot of possibilities for us to think about how we might want to proceed in terms of this regional sustainability plan specifically, and just kind of how we manage the systems that make up a city. So as I said, it opens up new opportunities and new challenges with the data that we have available and the technology that we have available. So there's a lot of ways that you can think about smarter cities technology specifically. It can be applied in energy, it can be applied in traffic, water, supply chains, weather prediction. There's a lot of ways the technology can be deployed. And I want to give you an example of one area in which IBM worked. This will hopefully help elucidate this concept a little bit more and make it a little bit clearer. So the city of Stockholm came to IBM a few years ago. There was a huge problem in relation to rush hour traffic, something people here can probably relate to. And what they wanted to do was try to reduce rush hour traffic by 20% in order to facilitate the movement of emergency vehicles, reduce carbon emissions, etc. So we worked with the city of Stockholm to develop a congestion pricing scheme and make the highway system really smart. And how did we do that? The way we did that is we monitored traffic volumes, and we basically put a scheme in place that as traffic increased, the price of the tolls also increased. This had the effect of creating a real strong behavior change in drivers and also making them aware of how many people were on the road. And that actually changed their behavior, because if there was more people on the road, you'd have to actually pay more. So the project was really a huge success. They saw the traffic volumes drop by 20% in just 60 days. The use of public transportation increased significantly. Toll revenue actually went up. And most importantly, they're now able to use the money that they had to use to maintain the roads to make investments in things citizens really care about, like public transportation and infrastructure. So the thing that facilitated that was collecting the data and putting a model in place that would enable an effective congestion pricing mechanism to emerge. And the city's now recognizing all of these really good benefits, I think. This brings me to my next point. How should we think about cities and sustainability at large? Typically, the way that governments are organized and the way that kind of we're organized is in these silos within the context of a city. But a city is really a complex system, and things are really interconnected. So we might think about transport and education differently. We might think about water and health as being separate aspects, but they're fundamentally interconnected. For example, we've seen areas, cities where the rise in public transport fares has led to a decrease in the amount of students that go to school. There's also strong linkages between congestion on the roads and the viability of a city in terms of attracting talent. People don't want to sit in traffic for half their lives. So these cities are really fundamentally interconnected systems, and I think that if we really begin looking at them that way, it opens up some new possibilities for us. I've already kind of talked about how technology can be used to confront a lot of the urban challenge we're facing kind of at a high level. But in order to really put ourselves on the path to urban sustainability, we need to think about organizing in different ways. And that's kind of where I want to focus the rest of the presentation on. So, I think it's really helpful to think about sustainability-related challenges at three levels if we're using this model. So the first level is within individual city systems. So what can we do to make our transport system more effective? What can we do to make our water system more effective? What can we do to make our business environment more friendly towards growth and investment? What can we do to make our utilities more energy efficient, for example? I think the second level that it's very useful to think about this is at the city-wide level. So how do choices we make in one system impact how other systems perform? And we've done work in the city of Portland that I'm going to talk about a little bit later on that shows how we might be able to draw these connections in a more effective way to inform policymaking. I think the third level we need to think about this is at a regional level. So the jurisdictional boundaries that have been drawn between communities or between counties are somewhat arbitrary in nature. But the problems that we're facing in the realm of sustainability don't really respect these boundaries. So I would argue that the most effective way that we can manage these issues is kind of at the regional level. But in order to do that, we need to develop new collaboration platforms and new ways of working together, some of which may be new and unfamiliar. So I'm going to provide an example on that as well. But those are the kind of three levels that I think is very useful to think about urban sustainability on. So I talked about the transport example, and I want to kind of go back to that as an example of what a system level issues that we want to think about were. So if you're talking about the true impact of raising public transportation fares and or reducing services, you can see that there are a lot of implications just with this one decision for the sustainability of the community. It doesn't really relate to CO2 emissions specifically, but if you look at just, you wouldn't think that the raising of public transit fares could have all these different impacts across the city. So if we're looking at optimizing individual city systems, I think this is a really interesting and useful way to look at it. We have to think about it across these different silos while we're making the decision in this one particular system. And we've worked with cities around the world to optimize or improve their performance in individual city systems, ranging from water to public safety, to workforce, social services, transport. So, I think we've seen a lot of successes in terms of working with cities on individual issues. And I think that in terms of approaching these individual systems, there are different ways you'd want to approach each of these. But I feel like technology could be a major accelerator in terms of achieving objectives, because it really does provide insights. It's all about the data. That's what I will keep on coming back to. The data provides the insights we need to inform really effective public policy, service delivery improvements, and all the great benefits. So that's kind of the position on the system level. If we're talking about a city level, so the work we did with Portland was a first-of-a-kind project through IBM Research. And essentially what we did is that we modeled the city. The end product of the engagement was a computer simulation of the city. So we did interviews with stakeholders across the city. We collected 10 years of data. And essentially what we did is we said, if you want to make a decision to increase public transit fares, for example, what's going to be the effect on the other parts of the city system? If you are going to put policies in place to try to reduce obesity, what's going to be the effect on people's willingness or desire or actual behavior in terms of walking or biking to work? So if you can put the data in this type of a format, what you can do is you can say, you can basically do what-if statements. So if I do this, what's the implication of that? Not only that, you can also go back over time and really look and see, was the model accurate? Did our policies actually achieve their desired objectives? And for Portland, it was really quite interesting because one of their major goals was carbon reduction. Their goal was to reduce their carbon emissions by, I think, if I look at my sheet, I think it was about 40% by 2030 and 80% by 2050. So when they looked across the data, they found some interesting things. So one of the main ways that they wanted to achieve that was by shifting people away from driving towards walking and biking. And what they found was an interesting connection between obesity and the use of and obesity rates and walking and biking. So the first thing they found was that people, as obesity went down, people walked and biked more. The first connection was. Let me look at my notes. Obesity levels went down as people walked and biked. This is not too surprising, right? That's not really surprising. But the causal arrows also went in the other direction as well, and that healthier people were more likely to walk and bike. So there's this kind of feedback loop between these two systems that we think is disparate within a city, health and transport and carbon emissions. And what came about was this kind of self-reinforcing positive feedback loop. So the more people, as obesity went down, more people walked and biked to work, and as more people walked and biked to work, the obesity rate continued to decline. So it's kind of an interesting connection that you wouldn't really think, but when we're thinking about sustainability at a regional level, I think that this points to the fact that we need to be creative in terms of how we're approaching the policy initiatives that we put in place. It's not only the obvious things that are going to make a difference in terms of promoting a more sustainable community. The third level of analysis I want to talk about is the regional level. So we did some work with the Sonoma County Water Agency. I was actually out there last week. It seemed to work really well in terms of making the vineyards grow. Basically, in California, the region, they really faced a strained water supply, a complex set of challenges, and there's all these different stakeholders involved in delivering the regional water and maintaining the infrastructure. Whereas before, all of these different organizations kind of did things on their own, or the level of collaboration was not so good. Now the system we put in place really allows all these stakeholders a common collaboration platform that they can use to collaboratively make decisions. So if you talk about optimizing a system, this shows how information can really be the conduit that can lead to increased performance. Because if things can be addressed in real time and stakeholders are really connected with one another, it really provides the opportunity to do things in a much more effective way. The reason why I put this regional example out there is, as I said, I think that the regional level is probably, that's going to be extremely important moving forward on this plan. So how can all of these counties and the city who don't have a history of working together put platforms in place, mechanisms in place to drive accountability, drive cooperation, drive collaboration? Because as I said, these challenges really are not confined to a specific geographical area or these arbitrary boundaries. They apply all across them. So I think that's food for thought. So what type of a platform based on data could this region use to really facilitate that type of sustained progress and accelerate its efforts? That's the end of my presentation. In closing, I think that the challenges are tremendous here, but I think that the opportunities are also big, and if we focus on getting the right methods of organization and the right types of technology to tie those together, I think it's possible that we really can drive a smarter planet. So thank you very much.